increment financing as it affects Norman Public Schools. This is a general board discussion along with any of cabinet or Assistant Superintendent Mr. Milner.
I have questions for Ms. Burkett. Sorry, Ms. O'Brien. I pulled a Nick. I'm so sorry.
It's the name tag. See, we didn't ever get you the updated name tag. It still, still says Brenda Burkett.
Wow. Somebody asked me if this was my last board meeting, and I said, not yet.
The CFO wouldn't allow us to purchase a new signage for a short period of time. Very frugal. Budget conscious as she is.
All right.
Okay. Can you take us through the benefits that the school district received in the last TIF? Because we had a good relationship with the last TIF, is my understanding.
Sure. I will let you know that with the last TIF and the one that we're referring to is the University Park, North Park TIF, number 2. That one was set up to be a 50-50 split between funds going, the sales tax and the property tax money going into the development fund, with that other percentage, and in our case, the 50% coming to Norman. The benefit that had for our district was that that 50% of that ad valorem that was coming to our district during the time the TIF was in place was not a chargeable in our state aid formula. So that meant that we were receiving those funds in the general fund without a takeaway or a deduct from our state aid formula. So that was a positive for our district. I will tell you that building fund was receiving 50% of its property taxes throughout that process. Now, the building fund is not set up in a chargeable situation, so building fund property tax was not a chargeable. So in that situation, we were receiving 50% of property tax, where we would have been receiving 100% if it weren't a TIF. So that's really the kind of the breakdown of how that impacted our general fund and building fund.
And how is the current TIF set up?
It's my understanding that the current TIF is set up for all of the sales tax and property tax to be retained within the TIF development process of developing and paying off for those developments.
And then my last question, will this negatively impact our funding going forward? Will this impact students and or per pupil funding?
Well, I would tell you that right now, the current TIF that is being proposed is not on the tax rolls. So currently, Norman Public Schools is not receiving any property tax revenue from that area. So it would not be a deduct or a reduction of revenue that we are currently receiving.
And then follow up, it's my understanding that this would be off the rolls for 25 years. Has anyone done a financial impact study yet and how that may impact the school district?
I am not aware, and nor have I been able to do any kind of projections on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the 2019 TIF was written as a 50-50, and that had a different effect on the MPS budget, as I'm understanding it, versus the proposed TIF being written as 100%. Was Norman Public Schools involved in the talks on how the TIF was written, or how were your financial impact concerns received?
I was not involved in any of the talks with this proposed TIF that is ongoing right now. Dr. Nick being involved in some of those conversations, I can't speak to. I mean, I believe he's been in some, but I don't know how. I don't know. I can't speak for him. I can just say that I was not involved in any of the talks for this setup for this arena TIF.
Okay, so as indicated by page 9 of the Rock Creek Entertainment District project plan as prepared by the City of Norman, they estimate that by year 10, there will be new to MPS enrollment by either 14% of residents, which equates to 95 students, 25% of residents new to NPS by 171 students, or 40% of residents new to Norman Public Schools by 273 students. And this is based on the residential addition to the TIF. When Dr. Migliorino was speaking at the Statutory Review Committee last month, he talked about if it were 14%, that would affect redistricting for the most part, if I'm remembering correctly. But if it is more than that, that could mean a new school would be required in that area. Can you talk a little bit more about this and if there's redistricting, what schools would be involved in the redistricting, if there is a new elementary school involved? Can you talk about how much a new elementary school would cost and a little bit more about where that money would come from? I'm sorry, that is a lot of questions all at once.
Could you repeat the question? I will tell you that a lot of those projections on enrollment, on redistricting, on a new school, there's so many variables involved in all of that, that no, I cannot speak to that. Especially not knowing how far in the future, and there's, I think in that question, maybe there was some comment or question about the ability to, well, I don't know, I'm not even going to try to repeat. I'm just going to say to you that I think there are so many variables and so many unknowns. I think there's a lot of hypotheticals that were prepared and probably studied into your information that you're sharing, but nothing that I've been involved in myself.
Okay, so let's break it down just a little bit. Mr. Milner, maybe you can jump in and help us kind of sort through these things.
Okay.
Based on the location of the TIF, what elementary schools that we have currently would be impacted?
So I believe we have Roosevelt, Cleveland, Adams. Is there any, I'm looking at front row there. I think those are the,
I think it's too short for Eisenhower.
yeah, so I think those are the elementary.
And what's the capacity of those schools right now? Do they have room to grow? Are they having space struggles now, or?
Well, we're always monitoring capacity, and as you know, with the legislation, it requires that we post that on our website. And so that's closely monitored. Is there room for growth? Yes. I mean, we have grown, and we continue to build additional classroom space, and it comes down to the conversation around portables, and do we bring those back, or do you build another school? I think, to not speak for Dr. Nick, and I know he certainly would love to be here to speak to this himself, but it didn't work on the timeline. But as it relates to that enrollment statement that you were talking about, there is a certain point that you cannot absorb, even with the additions of onto the current elementary sites. So then you have the potential for, do you build an elementary, and what size? I think to that question, again, we're making a little bit more of a speculative responses, because we don't know what the numbers would be. If you're looking at Wilson Elementary, right now the average square footage cost is between $341 and $364 for current new build. So if you took that middle ground of $350 a square foot, Wilson's at a $41,689. You're talking about $14.5 as far as $14.5 million. Now you have to do cost escalation at 4 to 6%. Sometimes it can be a little bit more over the next several years, but that gives you a range. You were talking about a Reagan Elementary, so that's a different size school at that same square footage cost at 78,000 square feet. You're talking about $27.6 million for an elementary school.
And those are today's dollars, so 10 years down the road, it might be more.
Yes, so you could see, yes, those are today's dollars, and so you could see a 4 to 6% escalation on average annually.
Okay, can you explain the terms of the land deal that was offered to Norman Public Schools by the OU Foundation?
Yeah, so there's 5.5 acres that is buildable land, and the letter of intent that the OU Foundation has expressed is $8 a square foot for that 5.5 acres. There is the possibility of also a detention area, which would make for a total acreage of 11.5 acres.
And where's this land located?
I don't have, I've got a map. I don't know. It's in that Rock Creek area, but I don't have the exact coordinates on that.
But in the TIF district, next to where they anticipate building the residences.
Yes, absolutely.
And 11, let's see, there's, what'd you say, 5 usable acres?
5.5, yeah.
And how much is needed for a school?
That depends on the size of school. So if you're talking a Wilson, that would be, you could have the potential of building in that area. If you're talking about a Reagan, that you would need much more than that.
And can you do the math for me on how much that land would be at $8 a square foot times 5.5 acres?
I didn't.
About 1.9 million.
Okay, so we wouldn't be locked into this agreement to buy this land. This would just be an option to.
You're correct, option to purchase. And so if we chose not to purchase it, that would go back to the OU Foundation, or they retain that.
But it's not a gift from the OU Foundation. This is an option to buy the land.
It's an option to buy the land. I will say that, $8 a square foot is a very good deal, honestly, for property in this area.
Okay, and how would the proposed TIF affect the millage rate, and how would that affect Norman Public Schools in Norman? For instance, what happens if the sinking fund revenues don't grow as fast as expected due to the concentration of new growth in the TIF district?
So that sounds like a Brenda O'Brien question. And I will tell you that as we have prepared and proposed and passed our bond issues, we always look at our net assessed valuation, we look at our targeted mills, and we do calculations with our bond advisor to try to, meet that target, stay under, to be mindful of the mill levy and the effect of taxing on our citizens. So I would say to you that as we've built and prepared our bond issues that we have to date, there is no impact because we did not have any of this land included in our calculations for property tax receipt. So there would not this would not have any impact on anything that we have already prepared. And then determining how this plays out, we would be mindful of that as we're working on our next bond issue. But there would not be any kind of impact on what we have in place right now.
Thank you.
So if we needed a new elementary school, where is the idea that this money would come from? Is it a new school bond, perhaps in 10 years? And how long do we have before this option to buy evaporates?
To take your last question, I believe it's 10 years. And then with regards to new construction, any additions, our funding source has always been the bond process. So bond proceeds.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Brockman?
I have a question. We talked through the negotiations of how we got to $8 because I thought that the number was lower.
The detention pond is included, which it's a wet detention pond, so it's not usable, but detention ponds are measured by capacity. So if we wanted to make it dry and keep the same capacity and make a playground out of it, or if we wanted to do underground detention and build over it, all that's going to cost money, but the assumption would be if the Norman Public Schools took the option and bought the 11 acres, which would be at $4 a foot, which is 5.5 usable at $8 a foot. So I don't want to make funny math. It's usable land right now. But if you bought all of it and then spent some amount to make the detention pond usable, and to me, the only way the school would be interested in buying it is if all the other land values around there shot up. And the option would then be build an elementary school there or sell it as an investment for revenues for the school to build a school somewhere else. So that would be the question for a future board at future times.
Is Norman Public Schools legally bound to build an elementary school on that land if we bought it and wanted to use it for something else? If, it turned out that there weren't enough students to justify a new elementary school, could we use it for something else?
No, and in fact, again, I've mentioned the letter of intent. That's the only thing that's been executed by the OU Foundation, which then prompts an agreement between the OU Foundation and the Norman Board of Education, and that'll be something that we'll be bringing to your attention and action on in the near future. So, good questions, but to my knowledge at this juncture, no, there's no obligation to build the elementary.
I haven't been able to find anything in the TIF plans where the planners estimated how the new area will grow with the TIF versus without the TIF. Has any of that been shared with you all?
I think most of those studies have been done by the Hunden partners, and so if it's not in there, then to my knowledge, it hasn't been done.
So I just want to throw out a comment here. I feel like there's a lot of unknowns here with this TIF. I would have appreciated more input sought from our school system when we're talking about potentially diverting funds from our public schools, when we're talking about what's best for the town. Ultimately, this is up to the town to decide if they want to go forward with this development. But I personally don't see a lot of benefit directly to the school district, and I'm unconvinced that this is what's best for our kids.
Yeah, just kind of jumping on that. So one of the questions that Ms. O'Brien answered earlier was about, if we're losing money on this. And the answer was that, well, we're not getting anything out of it right now, so we would be kind of neutral, right? We're not losing money out of our budget. But is it true to say that it's possible that area could develop on its own and we would be losing future monies from that without a TIF?
If there's not a TIF, I don't know as I'm sitting here what will happen with that land. It's not taxable now. So if I, again, think there's too many unknowns for me to speak to on that.
Thank you.
I have a question for the rest of the board. Would the other board members like to ask the city council to hire someone to do an analysis on the financial impact to the school district?
I personally would like more information, and I personally would like to see our counterparts on city council be respectful of the unknowns in this deal that might impact our district negatively, and get answers to that before they, made a decision on it. But ultimately, it's up to them.
I'm always of the perspective that more information does not help, or more information always helps, right? So, and then that way we can make a more informed decision as a town. A city council can make a more informed decision, getting more input from the parties that this would impact would be important to me as a citizen.
More information is always better. I just want to make sure that it gets filtered through our experts here, because many people don't understand school financing, chargeables, sinking funds. I remember the original TIF, or TIF number 2, or however it's referred to. There were board members back then that were supportive of not paying it off because we were getting money outside the formula. And in that 50-50 TIF, there were many people frustrated and wanted it paid off and said, no, there's no financial impact to the school, when the school lost $700,000 a year. And so to me, as long as the analysis, and so now we're looking at, if we were against a 50-50, then I'm assuming, those thought processes are going to be against 100%, because there are no monies coming outside the formula. So it's important for, yes, the city to do their studies, and yes, to filter it through how it affects our monies now, because that's the tough part. Is it going to develop without the TIF? Is it going to develop with the TIF? Because if it would develop without the TIF, then yeah, we're going to lose money in the TIF. If it won't develop without the TIF, then we're not losing any money. So it's a guessing game, and it's a roll of the dice of what's going to happen to the land one way or the other. But more information, as long as it's filtered through our experts. And Brenda, you'll have to stick around so you can continue to analyze that for us. And, that way Tyler can always point the finger at you and say, Brenda said that. But yes, complicated issue. The city council's got to decide what their process is. And, at the end of the day, it's an unknown. What we need in those schools. Will there be more students? Will there be housing? Will there be all those things? And at the end of the day, however we can best advocate for our schools is what our job is and what we need to be doing. And if there were a way to have something other than 100%, absolutely, that would be better for our schools. But it was that way last time, and it got criticized too. So I think this town's going to find a way to struggle with it. But the more we can do for us, the better off the schools will be.
Agreed.
Comments? All right. Next is agenda item 6B.